Hello, I'm Jonasz Rewiński. Welcome on board the Eastern Express. And as always, I hope you enjoy the journey ahead. Now, Russia's brutal treatment of Ukrainian prisoners was supposed to remain secret. But when your torture instructions literally say, be cruel, subtlety was clearly never the plan. On this episode, we dive deep into Russia's not-so-secret torture chambers. Now, if you're still shocked hearing that Russia treats Ukrainian prisoners inhumanely, you might have just woken up from a 3-year coma. Welcome back. We're jealous you missed so much. Anyway, without further ado, let's take a look at our latest report to find out more.
The talks between Russia and Ukraine have once again reached a certain kind of impasse. This time, both sides have traded accusations that the other is trying to delay the prisoner swap that was agreed upon during recent talks in Istanbul. In addition to an exchange of more than 1,000 prisoners, the deal also entailed the return of the bodies of 6,000 Ukrainian soldiers by the Russians. The Russian side says that Ukraine has refused to collect the bodies, while the Ukrainians say no date had been agreed upon and that the list of names provided by Russia was not in line with terms. Although Moscow has published footage of the bodies it intends to return, the Ukrainian side has been very critical of the delay.
So, the Russian side, as usual, is trying to play a dirty, political and informational game in these matters.
Any delays in fulfilling agreements have a real price. Russia has been intensifying its airstrikes against Ukraine in recent weeks, leading to further civilian casualties. Although there recently was a successful prisoner swap, declared the biggest since the war's outbreak, any other progress such as a ceasefire seems to be out of the question.
And now we're zoning in on the East-splaining portion of our show. Ever since Russia invaded Ukraine back in February 2022, relations between the two countries have broken down almost completely. Nevertheless, prisoner swaps, for example, are still able to take place. Here is why Kiev and Moscow can exchange prisoners despite the ongoing war and associated animosity.
Prisoner exchanges are a very common part of most wars, especially in the modern age. There are several reasons for belligerents to ensure that they take place, and not all of them have to do with good PR image. Primarily, however, they are a way for a country to boost morale. The returning soldiers are treated as heroes, and public support for the government may go up. For the military, a minor benefit is that the former prisoners may have intelligence reports to share, which could affect future battles. But prisoner exchanges are pragmatic and rarely are a show of goodwill. So much so that very often they occur under pressure from various humanitarian organizations. What's more, third-party intermediaries, like Turkey in the case of the war in Ukraine in the past, are often the ones who make sure that the process goes along smoothly. They verify prisoner lists, coordinate necessary logistics, and provide some sort of guarantee of security. Even though the belligerents do not have official communications channels, talks are very much still a thing behind the scenes, which is why prisoner exchanges can even happen in the first place.
And now let's take a look at the issue in greater detail. Leaked details from former Russian prison officials expose a terrifying, systematic cruelty far beyond what the world previously imagined. Russian special units, humorously labeled as elite, have operated a rotating torture regimen. Every month, fresh units would rotate in, ensuring that each new wave of abusers would leave no identifiable trace behind. And to help with anonymity, naturally, the guards wore ski masks and conveniently ditched their body cameras. Reports now confirm these instructions weren't isolated. Identical directives were sent to units in Moscow, Buryatia and Pskov, where torture quickly became part of the daily schedule. Prisoners were reportedly beaten until batons broke, and when the batons became useless, guards upgraded to insulated pipes ripped from the heating systems. There is Russian ingenuity for you, recycling infrastructure to maximize cruelty. The torture wasn't random either. Guards meticulously targeted the same spots daily to ensure wounds couldn't heal. And predictably, this led to rampant infections, gangrene, and inevitably, amputations. One prisoner reportedly died from sepsis, showing once again that Russian efficiency apparently extends exclusively to being cruel. But it actually gets worse than this, because sadism doesn't take lunch breaks. These units conducted experiments, testing various torture techniques to scientifically determine which inflicted the most pain. They even drained batteries and tasers because torturing prisoners under showers apparently requires peak voltage. Truly a hallmark of a modern civilized society there. Despite Russia's best efforts to hide this grotesque enterprise, evidence inevitably emerges. Ukrainian prosecutors recently initiated investigations based on footage showing Ukrainian prisoners tortured into singing Soviet anthems under gunfire. The sheer brutality, routinely normalized by Russian authorities, meets a legal definition of war crime. International tribunals are assembling evidence against these Russian atrocities. Key testimonies come from within the Russian prison officers themselves. These officers, likely disillusioned by a government that treats cruelty as protocol, are finally speaking out. One brave official is set to testify before the International Criminal Court, pulling back the curtain on Putin's horrific system. So, here we are, facing another chapter of brutal truth about Russian atrocities in Ukraine. It is a grim reminder that beneath Putin's well-curated propaganda and tailored suits lies a network of sadistic violence explicitly endorsed by the state. These revelations aren't new, but they are devastating as a confirmation of just how systematically cruel Putin's Russia has become. And if there is one thing we know for certain, it is this: brutality sanctioned by official order doesn't just indict individuals, it indicts an entire regime. And now here to shed more light on the issue is Maria Ionova, Ukrainian MP, European Solidarity. Hello and welcome to Eastern Express.
Hello, thank you for invitation.
So, many people are talking about prisoner exchanges today, but before we actually proceed to that topic, we should probably once again emphasize what's going on to those Ukrainian prisoners of war who are still in Russian captivity, because there are reports of serious misconduct, torture, and inhumane and degrading treatment. Can you tell us more about this, just to make our viewers aware of what we're really dealing with here?
Let me first also to widen a little bit the question of our prisoners in war, because this issue is very painful and heartbreaking for us, starting from 2014. And again, it's not about only military people, it's also about civilian. And for me, also, we know how huge also topic is kidnapping by Russians our Ukrainian children. That is why for me it's also they are prisoners there in Russia Federation. But when we are talking about the numbers, as according to official numbers, estimates vary between 6,000 and 8,000 Ukrainian military personnel remains in Russian captivity or in occupied also territories. But as also we hear from Russia's public figure, it's around 6,500 soldiers. So independent monitors believe that the true number may be really higher due to the secret detentions and lack really of full of transparency. I personally visited our Ukrainian prisons where the Russian soldiers have been in 2016, in 2017, and I can tell you that their conditions are absolutely according to Geneva Convention. And we also, by accident, we met International Red Cross and other international humanitarian organizations. So they have newspapers, they've got medicine, they were getting letters from their relatives. Unfortunately, we know in what brutal conditions our prisoners in war, and of course tortures, brutal tortures, and in what conditions they are in Russian prisons. So that is why when we are talking about treatments and conditions, UN and also human rights groups report that over 95% of our Ukrainian prisoners of wars describe severe abuse. So it's beatings, it's electric shocks, it's sexual violence, so executions, and also personally I helped dozens of our Ukrainian prisoners who have been castrated in Russian prisons, because we, of course, now are trying to return them back to normal life and to make some implants also. So this is the deadly living conditions which are in Russia Federation, and we know that already also it is proved that over 200 deaths among Ukrainian prisoners of war in Russian prisons since 2022. Abusive conditions contributed in many cases, so that is why we have so many cases that they have been killed in Russian prisons. So, of course, when you ask me about the problematic issues what we have nowadays, first of all, it's the huge number of our Ukrainian citizens in Russian prisons, because let's be honest. Yes, our Ukrainian armed forces, now it's a big number, but they are not professional, they are trained, but it's volunteer people who went to defend Ukraine and who went to defend Ukrainian European gate, if I can say. So that is why when we are talking about our prisoners, it's also the problem by information that they are limited oversight. We know that UN, ICRC, they absolutely do not have confidential access to many Russian detention. So they do not have, there's also direct contact, and Ukraine relies on Russia provided lists, but this have proved incomplete and delayed, complicating accounting and communication. You know that we are talking about the prisoners, but there are huge number of our people, Ukrainian people, who are missing persons.
Aren't you disappointed by the international response here? Because, like you've mentioned, there are problems agreeing sanctions, which should be like the most basic response based on the violations of humanitarian law by Russia, the bombardment of civilians, which occurs on a daily basis. But actually making sure that there is an appropriate tribunal, there is an appropriate legal framework, and the war criminals responsible that are tried, this is even more difficult, right? Russia will simply not say, okay, we're giving them away. They will not do so. Do you think the international community and the legal system are ready for this immense challenge of once again ensuring that justice is being done with respect to a nation that, unlike, say, Nazi Germany after World War II, is basically going to look after members of its own military, even if they are, war criminals, and they are going to do everything that they can to make it more and more difficult to ensure that these people face the appropriate international tribunal?
First of all, when we are talking about infrastructure, I'm talking about international organizations, I'm talking about different conventions, statutes, agreements. We have done it. But unfortunately, we really also, that capable and responsible states which shared the values and principles of that documents which they have already also adopted, and even at least when we are talking about United Nations, we have to approve really that we are capable and we are able to defend and to implement all that provisions which we have been signed all together. Because it is, if now Russia will not be punished, then not only the international order, not only the international rules, now everything, the whole system of the rules and principles are under the threat. But altogether, we can do it. It's about political will, it's about timing, it's about operative and decisive decision and acts, not only statements, because it's obvious that Russia is an aggressor and a terrorist state, because it's about kidnapping, and it's already, there is a case, criminal case by Putin and by ombudswoman that it is already proven that they are criminals, but unfortunately still a lot of leaders of the countries would like to shake hands and trying to find peace in Putin's eyes. So unfortunately, Russia could be stopped only by force. And Ukrainian nation, more than 11 years fighting and also giving European continent time to be more decisive, to be more operative, and to be also prepare and also explain to their communities that such uncomfortable things I understand. But unfortunately, Putin was absolutely and is absolutely clear that yes, he would like to delete Ukraine and he would like to go further and to divide European Union and NATO countries. I also realize that there is now a threat in American policy. So it's another definition. How do they see Russia and trying to find the peace in Putin to more, paying attention to trade and economic issues. But unfortunately, after 11 years, we can say that Russians could be stopped only by weapon. And that is why when we are talking about Ukrainian prisoners, it's not only that people who are in Russian prisons. We also saying that people who are still on occupied territories, who are by different occasions and reasons, they are not able to leave also occupied territories. I think that they are also prisoners, and that is why it's also like a war crimes. It's about medical, it's about human rights groups, so it's about killers, torture. So we do not know, the world do not know the true information. What is going on now in Mariupol? What is going on now in Kherson region occupied territories? What is going on now in Energodar, where the second biggest nuclear plant is? So unfortunately, all these filtration camps, when we are talking about children, so there are still lack of information. And unfortunately, I hope that after our common victory, when the truth appears, it will be brutal and awful. And Mariupol, Bucha, Borodyanka, all our tragic Izium towns. So Russia, that is why Russia has to be punished already. And it's about different actions, including freezing the Russian assets. So when we are talking about children, when you ask me, yes, documentary, it's 20,000 children. But unfortunately, we understand and realize that it's more than 100,000 children. So it's abstractions, it transfers from orphanages or summer camps into Russia. So it's kidnapping. And that is why even International Red Cross, they also consider this acts also potential genocide actions. So that is why we have to return and to raise this issue, what they are doing with our Ukrainian children on a high level, and especially in United States, where they can see all these war crimes. So in summary, when Russian occupation is characterized by a systematic campaign to really dismantle Ukrainian identity and autonomy, employing tactics such as enforced displacement, repression of really cultural expression, elimination of Ukrainian language and education. So it's about citizenship. It's about mass abductions of children. So human rights abuses, detention, tortures, killers are widespread. So with little to no to access of international monitors. That is why we have to push Russia to open more information. What is going on with our Ukrainian citizen? And of course, to stop them, to kill our people and to torture our people. And that is why we really are very happy that at least such small number of our people coming back home.
Maria Ionova, with a chilling account of Russian crimes against humanity, and again a compelling argument for sanctions and other forceful measures to be applied against Russia in order to compel it to stop the killing and stop the crimes that it is committing on a daily basis. Thank you very much for joining us here today.
Thank you.
And thank you, of course, for all the insight that you provided.
Thank you.
And now we're moving on to Eastern News Flash, a series of all the other stories from the East that you absolutely don't want to miss. A leaked FSB, or Russian Security Service file, says that Russian intelligence is becoming increasingly concerned by China. The revelation comes despite Moscow and Beijing openly presenting themselves as very closely knit partners.
It seems that China and Russia may not be best friends forever after all. According to documents accessed by the New York Times, leaked by cybercrime group Ares Leaks, the FSB refers to Beijing as the enemy and has accused Chinese intelligence of trying to recruit Russian scientists, officials and business people. The FSB also says that China has been collecting military secrets relating to Russia's war in Ukraine, as well as data on Russia's ventures in the Arctic and Central Asia. Although Moscow and China are currently connected by their economic needs, the two countries have been rivals for centuries, especially during the Soviet era. While Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping officially speak of a no limits partnership and eternal friendship, it seems that this ancient rivalry still bubbles under the surface.
Diplomatic and security sources have told AFP that Russia has replaced the Wagner Group in Mali with the Moscow-run Africa Corps. Mali's ruling junta, which seized power in 2020 and 2021, has been moving increasingly closer to Russia.
PMC Wagner is Russia's most well-known paramilitary group. It was disbanded and restructured following a failed coup by Yevgeny Prigozhin in 2023 and his subsequent death in a mysterious plane crash near Moscow. In addition to operating in the war in Ukraine, it has also had a strong presence in African countries like Mali, although Mali's authorities never admitted to Wagner being present. After Mali broke ties with former colonial power France, it made a pivot towards working more closely with Moscow. Africa Corps is meant to be the Wagner Group's successor and therefore is taking over the contracts that the latter used to hold. Groups like Wagner have often come under fire and have been denounced by human rights organizations over the brutal methods they have employed across Mali.
China is looking to go from the world's biggest creditor to its largest debt collector. China's previous large-scale loans under its Belt and Road Initiative are now coming back to inflict financial pain on the recipients.
The reason behind Beijing becoming the world's biggest debt collector is due to the maturation of the Belt and Road loans, whose grace periods have now expired. Yet as China is shifting its approach when it comes to lending money, special attention has been given to Central Asian nations as they owe Beijing billions. It is unclear whether China will reach for the same strong-arm repayment tactics it has used against some developing nations when it comes to Central Asia. This is because of their geographical importance to China and some of its rivals. Beijing still wants to maintain good relations with Central Asia and continue signing lucrative contracts for the region's crucial natural resources.
And for this episode of Eastern Express, it's the end of the line. Please stay with us here on TVP World for more latest news and updates.